I want to introduce today's guest, Kayla MacArthur. Kayla is somebody who I met in sort of a serendipitous way. We are both in a networking organization, and years ago, like I think during COVID, 2 or 3 people had told each of us, like, hey, you guys should connect. You're both in Central America and you're both travelers and you should connect. And we both were like, yeah, great, cool. And we like messaged each other, but never actually sat down to meet. And then something told me, Kayla, to you this year. And I was like, oh, yeah, I remember this chick. I want to connect with her. I'm always interested in meeting other entrepreneurs. And so anyway, it's just, I love, thank you. I love that we met in sort of this serendipitous way. And of course, as soon as we started chatting, we realized how much we had in common and how we'd been almost living parallel lives and businesses, sort of kind of, especially for the last year. And so I just think it's so interesting. Sometimes you're just meant to meet somebody in the time in which you're meant to meet them. And we for sure were meant to meet. And we've not worked together. This is our first collaboration. But from a professional and personal standpoint, I really appreciate, Kayla, the candid way that you run your business, that you share your life, in one-on-one conversations that you and I have just had sporadically, and also the way that you share your work and your life out on social media and beyond. And we'll talk a lot about what you do. But I just want to say, I'm starting these pivot chats off with people that I know fairly well and feel that have a real contribution to this conversation. And so, yeah, I just want to say that, like, Kayla has been somebody who interestingly sort of flitted into my life recently, sort of, and the impact that we've had on each other's lives and business already has been really beautiful. So thank you for that. Kayla is a coach. Kayla is a brand new author. And she's been in business, I think, like 7 years or more. So we are not going to be talking so much about one specific pivot, even though she just kind of went through one. But we're going to be talking about really what Kayla has noticed in her own business over these many years and career around how pivots sort of start to sneak up on her, both intentionally and unintentionally, and what those patterns are that she's noticed. Because I think even if your experience isn't exactly like Kayla's, and it probably won't be, you will for sure find something in her story and in what she's learned about herself. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to pay it forward. So thank you, Kayla, for joining me. And I'll let you introduce a little bit about what you do and anything else that you want to share about yourself before we jump in.
Hi, thank you, Laura. I just loved the way that you spoke about our meeting and how serendipitous it was, and all good things happen in exactly the right time, right? So very excited to be here and grateful for you for doing this. So yeah, I have been in business for 7+ years. I am a transformational life coach, and lately the way I've been liking to describe my work is I work with people who want to step off the traditional path and forge their own, because that was so much of my story. It's really about living a life that's sovereign and free. And I think that entrepreneurship is a way to do that. And a lot of my clients are entrepreneurs who are either starting a business or they are in a business and they are working to make it sustainable so that they can have that lifestyle that they desire, and also help people, because that's a big piece as well. Yeah, I'm also a co-author of Gravel Roads, which is my partner's 365-day journey around the world, the memoir of that adventure. And it focuses in on mental health and resilience, and also culture and the goodness of humanity. So we're going to be talking more about that project in a little bit. But that's a little bit about my work. In terms of me personally, I am currently living in a small Mexican beach town on the western coast of Mexico. It's called Sayulita, and it is just absolutely wonderful. This is it for me. This life that I'm living was what I saw for myself back in 2013 when I first started to think about going out on my own and having my own business. And I'm waking up and living that life every day, being able to have full control over my time and to enjoy this beautiful environment and to be outside and to be in community. And Sayulita is just so conducive to all of these things. And I'm just really grateful to be here, living here with my partner and our cat. And yeah, this is going to be home for a while.
I love it. I got so many chills when you said, this is it for me. Because that's really, for me, I've been in business 5 years. That's what I was searching for to say for myself 5 years ago. I think it's what most of my clients are looking for, most of what our audience is looking for, most of what your clients are looking for, or in the process of creating. And great way to start, because just because this is it for you doesn't mean like you copy paste your life and you found it and you get your diploma and like you reach the one and only mountaintop in your life and business and like there you have it, done, ta-da. Like, no, now you have something to sustain and keep growing and evolving and creating, and what within this is it for me, planet. And that's so what this interview series is about. And what my work is about, and clearly what your work is about. So I love that. Love that. Chills everywhere. So there's so many places that we can get started. I'm curious, one of the things that we've been talking about in terms of setting up this conversation is how you've noticed some patterns, and I think you were the one that even started calling them seasons. And I think, for sure, there are lots of models and ways, that people have put out into the world, ways of looking at change or transition. And I think that's not really what we're trying to create here, but I think you kind of created a model. It's sort of, just in our conversation around, there are these seasons, and I think there's seasons in life, there's seasons in business. And when we started talking about your pivot experience, looking at it from the perspective of there are these seasons, there are these things that sort of happen both intentionally and unintentionally. We go after those changes and they kind of, like, for lack of a better word, they happen to us, or they sneak up on us, or they surprise us, or they're unintentional. So I'm curious if you want to just start by sharing a little bit about what you've noticed in your sort of cyclical, seasonal kind of approach to your this is it for me, to your life and your work, and how it's been evolving.
Yeah. So I think that this can happen on many different levels, right? There's kind of these macro seasonal cycles that we have in our life and business. And there's also kind of the micro seasonal cycles that we have in our business that can happen on the day to day. It can happen with our energy and our creativity, but it can also happen in terms of like these chapters that we have in our lives and businesses. And so really talking about this at the macro level, I've noticed since becoming an entrepreneur, the 7-year journey that I've had, I've gone through many cyclical seasons. Like there is a spring, a summer, a fall, and a winter. And for me, I think I find it easier to be in spring and summer. So when the ideas are flowing, when the clients are flowing, when there's just this buildup of good things to celebrate, of successes, of accomplishments, opportunities coming my way. And then fall tends to be a harvest time. So maybe things start to slow down. You're kind of reaping the abundance that you created from that spring and summer. And then winter, my gosh, this is like the most uncomfortable place.
No, the winter.
Right? It's like you just go underground and it's cold and it's dark and you're like, what am I doing? And you're questioning everything and doubting. And, I want to normalize the seasons and cycles that we experience. And I think sometimes we might feel like, oh, you've been in business for 10 years. You don't have that anymore. And that's absolutely not true, or at least I don't think it is. The people I've talked to, I don't think it is. You're always going to be going through these shifts because we're meant to change. We are nature and nature changes. And when we just surrender to that, life becomes beautiful if we allow ourselves to go with the flow. So macro level, I've seen this kind of in my work itself, I started off as a health and wellness coach, and then I moved into manifestation coaching, and then I moved into more general transformational life coaching. It's looked like learning new modalities, working with different mentors, right? I'll work with certain mentors for a season, and then I take what I need, and it's time to move on to the next. And there is a winter period of like waiting for the next one to appear, right? So that happens on the macro level. And then on the micro level, I see seasons and cycles happening with my energy and with my creativity, and also with my clients. It's really interesting. I was thinking about this the other day. I tend to have like cohorts. I don't have a program where everyone's together. It's all one-on-one, but it's like there's like a cohort,
so
like,
funny.
you know, like a certain
Like they come in at the same time.
same time. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. That's so funny. Yeah.
Right? It's really interesting. And we work together, and then, you know, they end up completing, and then it's like a new cohort comes in, and sometimes there's some sprinkled in there, but it's really quite interesting how that works. And I'm actually at the beginning of a new cohort right now, and I'm really excited about it. So
cool.
Yeah.
I think when timing, like flows of clients as an example, shifts, it can be really effing scary too, right? Like, oh, no, don't go. Like, I've loved working with you. No, I have clients that work with me for years. And there is a time and a place, as you said, with your mentors, you know, and coaches and whoever it is that you bring on to support you in your journey. Like there is a season for working with one person for a period of time. And then there is usually a season to stop. Even the people who've worked with me for a long time, they've I don't want to say left and come back, but they've paused and, you know, come back into a more regular way of working together. And that's totally normal. I've done that with my coaches as well. So thank you for normalizing that too, because I think there is, and then of course, like there is almost like a space of like dependency of like, well, I can't run this business without my coach. Hold on a minute, right? Or I can't journey myself through life without this person. And then for me, that's one of my clues of like, hold on, let's get back into my power and pay attention to. I love having support. And I also, you know, this is my place to play in. But I think that's a really interesting point that you make too about the clients coming in and out or evolving in terms of their timing. It's funny, I've had that too. And it's something I've only just really noticed. But I think that can be really scary if you're running a business that, you know, pays your bills. And I find so often, I've seen this in myself, I've seen this in my clients, when we do have those ebbs and flows, typically, to use your word, like there is a season for me underneath what's happening in my clients. You know, and so as the clients ebb and flow, usually when the clients start to wrap up and slow down before the next cohort comes in, I usually need that extra time for me because I'm probably pivoting or dealing with something in my life. Or are you noticing that in your work, in your life, that what happens in the dips, in the slower periods?
Yeah, I think that that's really interesting. It's almost like the winter, right? Like we've worked together, they've harvested their changes, their transformations, they're completing. And now it's like that time and space. It's like when we breathe, we inhale, we exhale, but there's a pause between them. And so I think here is a perfect example of a pause. And that is some time for you to kind of do a gut check. Hey, what do I want to call in next? Am I feeling aligned with what I'm doing? Is there a change that needs to occur? And then it's like when we're on board again, when we're ready, when everything's all lining up, then springtime starts and the people come in and it starts over again. So yeah, I don't think I noticed that until you said it, but when you said it, I was like resonating. Yeah.
It's like, it's all, you know, art imitating life, life imitating art, work imitating you, you know, or sort of the multiple layers. Yeah, because I noticed this summer when I was going through my pivot, I guess I still am sort of integrating that pivot, but I was having the wintry question mark time this summer. And one of the things I noticed was the people, like, I think sometimes you can also look at what's happening in your clients. What are they coming to you for? as a sense, because I noticed like, oh, I've been spending the last year or so working with people who've been in business longer than I have, who are making really big change, who, and I started creating this list of like, I got a cohort like a year ago, but I didn't like pay attention exactly to what the work I'm doing now and then the way that I'm speaking about it. And so I think it really caused me to go, well, hold on, I help people with their pivots and I'm pivoting. Okay, yay and crap and all the stuff that goes with that. Which is sort of a piece of how this pivot chats was birthed. It was like, this needs to be talked. We need to be talking about this more. We just need to be talking about it. And I think too, your piece about the micro level of what's happening within and paying attention to your energy, something I know about you and the way that you work and the way, just because I know some of the modalities that you practice, you're really tuned into the energetics, to the body, to your body. How do you notice that for yourself in the seasons, or have you noticed patterns there?
Yeah. So I've noticed that when I'm in a winter, it's very hard for me to be creative. It's very hard for me to write. The ideas are almost like all dried up. And I sometimes want to force spring to come. But I think when I actually just sit in the void and let it overtake me, it can be scary. Like, oh, am I ever going to create anything ever again? But when I just sit with it and allow it to be there, it actually passes more quick. And so that's kind of what it looks like in terms of creativity. And then when I'm getting into the spring, I feel the ideas starting to bubble up, but it's not quite ready to come out yet. It's almost like a simmering, like, ooh, there's some activity happening. And then next in summer, it's like, and I'm showing up online and I'm like connecting with people and I'm really out in the world. And, as I'm thinking about this, it really does relate to our cycles as women too.
It does.
Our spring, our summer, we have more energy. The energy is building. There's a lot of activity. And then it's like the fall, things start to slow down. And then we're back in that winter phase. And I noticed this happening. I don't even think there's a specific period of time that this happens. It just happens. And part of my work right now is really accepting where I'm at, accepting the season that I'm in without trying to force or control them, and just like kind of letting my body lead the way, paying attention to those signals. Like right now, I personally feel like I'm in a spring. I feel the ideas bubbling up after a long winter. They're not quite formed yet, but they're coming. They're almost here. So much of my creativity is linked to what I am able to create in my business, right? Because when I am out there connecting and networking more and writing posts and sharing my writing and sharing my insights, that's when the clients start to come in. When I'm in the winter, maybe there might be some referrals that come in, which is awesome, but there's less generation during that time. And again, that can be kind of scary. And I've had to go through it many times, but I'm just starting to realize I just got to get comfortable with this. And I just got to allow myself to be here.
Yeah. Okay. I have like 97 questions now in comments of what you just said. Because I think what you're also reflecting without trying to is one of my big values in terms of how I run my business, but also how I support my clients in running theirs, which is there's no fucking one way to run a business. You have to find your own way. For some people, their lead generation doesn't necessarily hit seasons in the same way that you're describing, right? And neither is like what you're describing is not right and it's not wrong. It just is. It's Kayla. It's Kayla's season. It's Kayla's cycle. It's what's work. And it's also, I think, your business and your business model, and it's all beautiful. And to your point, like just acknowledging who you are, what you do, and letting the way you run your business just simply be the way that you run your business and not trying to friggin' be somebody else. I think is really helpful, because it's so easy to get caught up in, well, I need to be consistent on social media. And to hear you say, you really spoke to me when you were talking about your writing, because that's one of the ways that I express myself creatively. I think it's one of the ways that a lot of, even though you're an author, even people who are not authors feel that writing piece of it is one of the ways that they express. And when I don't have anything to say, it's really scary because I have a lot to say. I have a lot to say about my work, about my clients' work, about this journey. And so but I also have those moments of like, I got nothing. And like, yes, I can go repurpose stuff, and I have, and I do. But sometimes it's just not even, it doesn't matter. Because there is no one right way to do it. And I think for you, talking about like surrendering to it and accepting like this is just the way that my seasons work. There's something in that I think we can all really take a minute and sit with, which is, well, what is it for me? And what can I be more just accepting of what it is instead of pushing against what is? Because that's right, the definition of suffering. That's when we start to get comparisonitis and start running at some business strategy or marketing strategy that doesn't make sense for our cycles or for our business. And maybe it'll get you a few bucks in a minute, but it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
And to trust yourself is what I hear underneath all of that, right? Trusting your body for you, but like, some people aren't as in tune with their body, but trusting yourself that this is just how it is and it's fine. And the next level, the next cohort, I love that word, of clients, will come at the right time. And this is my season for winter. This is my season for quiet and questioning and, whatever
Yeah.
becomes. Which is hard because that damn winter, man, like nobody likes it, right? I was talking to somebody yesterday about it, and I said, it's almost the like, oh crap, like here we go. I feel it coming. Yes. No, the winter's coming, and I'm laughing because it's funny because it's true, right? But I also think so much of what I want to do with these chats is to normalize this experience, just like anything in life. Like there's winters, there's stuff that's hard. And for you to say like, this is it for me, right? I've created a life and business and career that I love, and I still have those moments. Mm-hmm. That's real.
Yeah. Yeah. And it does require a huge amount of trust to be living and working in these cycles and in these seasons. And it requires surrender. And there's a quote that I love. I think it's by Lao Tzu. The quote around, nature doesn't hurry, yet everything is accomplished. And so what I've found is when I'm not resisting in resistance to my seasons and I really allow myself to flow with them, everything always gets done. Clients get created, money gets replenished, creativity gets replenished. It's like trusting that the seasons are going to keep moving forward and it's going to come around again. And yeah, I think it's really just living with nature, living partnered with nature, modeling the earth and the wisdom that it has for us. Just like nature, right? We can get everything done. We can get everything accomplished when we allow ourselves to live into our seasons.
So that's bringing me now to something else I wanted to talk to you about. Thank you. Perfect natural segue, which is, you're living in Mexico. You and I share a love for travel and adventure. And I don't love the term digital nomad because I think that implies that you're constantly traveling, and neither of us do that. Where we have a home base. But you've talked so much online, and I think just in our conversations about what Mexico has taught you in terms of like the capitalistic hustle grind, North American or first world sort of approach to work and life, and the constant doing, right? Which is not at all paying attention to seasons and not at all allowing, like, it's not okay, right? In that world, it's not okay to slow down. Versus what you've learned, what Mexico has taught you. So I'm curious, like, what would you like to share about that? Because I see that sort of weaving into what I've just seen change in the 6 or 12 months that I've known you, however long it's been.
Yeah. And I love this question. And so the resistance that I feel that I've spoken about to the seasons, I honestly feel that that's internalized capitalism.
I agree.
Right?
Yep.
It is the needing to do, needing to rush, needing to get things done, needing to grow, like always have to be growing. And coming to Mexico, this place has activated more of me living seasonally and cyclically. Like I was aware of it when I was living in America, but I don't think I was actually applying it in my life. And being in a place where, and not to say that there isn't capitalism in Mexico, of course, but it's the land, it's the nature here, it's the jungle, it's the ocean, it's the sun, and being connected to the elements has allowed me to really slow down. And then also the culture values different things here, right?
Yeah.
In Mexico, it's not that they aren't hard workers. They are. They have to work. They have to provide for their families. But there's an element of like relax harder. And Ryan came up with that. Work hard, relax harder.
It. Oh,
And, you know, there's a family that lives across the street from us, and they have this little tree in the center of the road that's like growing up in the dusty streets. They have a table, plastic chairs. Every night, generations are around that table, enjoying each other's company. There's kids playing in the streets. They're running around barefoot. They're on their bikes. There's animals, dogs, just happily meandering about. It's a different pace of life here. And I think added that I'm in a beach town too. There's a different pace of life, even from like Mexico City, for example. And so it's almost like, did I find this place or did it find me? Like, do I belong to this place or does it belong to me? Like, I feel like I came here to activate a new part of my growth, to activate the cyclical living and really being in tune with myself. And I'm just really grateful for all that the culture has taught me and all that the environment has taught me. And it makes it really easy to see clearly how America operates. Like the context for American culture is so much more clear when you are living outside of it for a period of time. And I noticed when I go home, like when I go back to visit my family or visit Ryan's family, I feel it. The moment I stepped foot in the airport, I was just like walking along and some guy comes up behind me and it like made a comment about how I was going so slowly and taking up so much space. I'm like, what?
Right.
I don't remember who said this, but it's almost like when we can go on this journey to becoming more indigenous to ourselves, that's when things just open up. And we're able to live in a way that really is reflective of who we are, what our natural pace is, and how we want to live. So it's having the courage to cast off the societal context that we're in around capitalism and just really allowing ourselves to find our own rhythm.
I love it. And then, you know, there's a business case for that too. I always say, like, I would like people to like do quote unquote the right thing because it's right for them. But if you need a business case, like there is a business case that actually makes it easier for you to put your work out into the world when you're doing work like in your zone of genius versus sort of kind of near it, right? Or you're following your marketing approach in a way that actually fits for you. You're going to attract people more easily. Then your business is more sustainable. Then your life is more sustainable. Like there is actually like a logical business case to what you're talking about. And also like, if you just want to enjoy your life, like this is one of the things I think to pay attention to. Thank you for saying that. Okay. Can we talk about your book?
Yeah. So starting just to give some context, right? We had talked about intentional pivots versus unintentional pivots. And sometimes an opportunity will come into your life that requires you to reorganize how you live and how you work. And you weren't expecting it. And that's what this book was for me. It wasn't me operating in my coaching business and feeling, ooh, there's a pivot or a shift here that I want to make in my work. It was, here's this opportunity on a silver platter. Are you going to take it? And it's going to require you to just do things completely differently. So even thinking about it though, was it unintentional or was this just a manifestation of mine, something that I wanted, a dream of mine coming to fruition at like the time that it was meant to come? So, because I wanted to write a book forever.
Because writing, you were a writer anyway, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was something that I wanted to do in my life. But in the previous times where I had tried to write my own book, I couldn't sustain interest in the book, in the content of the book for long enough to actually write the book. And so when Ryan came along and he's writing this book, he's someone who he can sit down at a computer from sunrise to sunset and write and not edit himself, just completely write what's on his mind. I'm the opposite. I can't do that. Like writing requires a lot of my resources. And so it was interesting that our skill sets were a perfect match for each other. So here he came with this skeleton, this book, his journey, his retelling of this adventure around the world. And then here I came with my skill set of editing and beautifying and polishing. And together, when we put them together, it made a perfect whole. And so the book is really quite special because it has this beautiful writing, this music, as I call it, and also it's rich with insights and rich with his stories that he wants to tell. So you get both of the best worlds, I think, with this. But it did come out of nowhere. It came around right after the eclipses in June of 2021. He basically asked me to come on board and do this book project. And I'm thinking, sure, yeah, I'll come on board. It will be like 4 months, maybe 5 months. Turned into like a whole year, pretty much. Yeah. And talking about cycles and seasons with Ryan, his energy operates very differently than mine, especially when it comes to creativity. Like I just mentioned before, he can just get it out there, but I need more space and time. And so that's what took so long, was me having to kind of do things in a way that, like, just a forcing or a pushing way that I don't like. But I'm glad that he did, and that we were kind of able to meet in the middle. So he was kind of pushing me along to get this done, and I was able to push the edges of my creativity. So of course, because this was taking so much of my resources, I was not able to put energy into my business in the way that I normally do. Luckily, in September of 2021, I booked out my practice and created 2 people on my waiting list. So I was actually in a perfect position to let go of marketing for a little while. Wasn't intentional, wasn't expected, but I had to look at this as, oh my gosh, this is lining up for me to be able to put more of my time and energy into this book project. And so that's what happened. It just pretty quickly became clear, like, I need to devote myself to this project. I'm going to serve the clients that I do have, and we're going to create this beautiful book. We handed it in May of last year, or no, May of this year, sorry, to be edited. And then again, I was launched into a winter because I had clients who had been on my waiting list who were kind of about to finish up. The book project is done. It's like, whoa, there was like a void almost, like, what's next? And so, I'll stop there. I feel like I could continue, but want to hear your thoughts so far.
Yeah, well, there's so much in that, because, and I'll just start with what you just said at the end, which is like, there's a phrase out there. It's like PTSD, but it's like post good time disorder or something. Like what happens when you come back from vacation or from a travel, or like, and I see it so much in my work, because I've never loved the crap out of what I do like I do now. And even like every year it's more, even though I also have had plenty of winters, and I didn't know what it was really like to work in my zone of genius. I didn't know what it was really like to be free creatively. And I can work into the wee hours of the night on something if I don't pay attention, or my boyfriend doesn't say, are we going to have dinner? Like, what's going on with you? And I'm like, what? I don't even know what time it is. Right. But there is this coming down, and I experience it sometimes. Like, there are weeks where I experience it every day at 5 o'clock when I shut down from work, and I go, oh, I have to like adjust into my life planet. And there's a coming down from a high, right? Like a natural high when you close out a creative project, or you just shut down. For me, sometimes it's just shutting down for the day, like normal life shutting down for the day. But I think that was the feeling I felt just in my body when you were talking about May handing it off, and then like the void of like, that was so cool. And also like the beauty of like having something being complete, but also now what?
now?
And you also had some clients, but like, you know, so I think it's just sort of this weird, like, where was my purpose? Where did that go? Right. That I see, and I see that in my clients too, when anything gets birthed, it's like this high of having it be complete and you're finally ready for something to be done. But then there's also the void of like, your creativity has to shift to the next thing, because that's what I think what we're here as humans to do. And that's why I love entrepreneurship, because it's set up to support you in continuing to create. But then it doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean that it's not within its hardships of like that feeling. So I'm just curious, like, what do you remember from those moments in May when everything was done and you did like, what does that void feel like for you?
Yeah, it was really alarming. It was really like, it took me a moment to kind of realize that I was in winter. The awareness didn't happen so fast. I was like kind of trying to get back into marketing, but it wasn't landing. It just wasn't working. It didn't feel good. And I also felt like kind of underconfident, because here I went for like 9 months without really putting anything out in the world. And so it was like kind of getting back up on those shaky legs. And
Totally.
I just remember feeling really confused. There was like a confusion that settled over me. And I think this is when we connected, Laura. And I was telling you, like, am I meant to be a writer? That experience was just so profound. I really think we created something amazing. Am I like, was this ushered into my life because I'm meant to like, you know, leave coaching and I'm meant to become a writer and fulfill that destiny that has felt like it is my destiny, but I've struggled to produce. And now here I found my writing partner, right? Like there was a lot of
You've got more books
confusion.
coming, right? You'll be writing more books together. You've already decided.
Yes.
So yeah. And I think that question of like putting that, I ask my clients this a lot. I've started asking my Pivot Chats interviewees this question too, because I finally, for the first time in 5 years, asked myself that question this summer of like, do I still want to do this? Like, that's a profound question to ask yourself when, to use your words, like, this is it for me, right? Like, and you weren't talking about just coaching, you know, isolated, but when that's what has made up your, this is it for me, I've created a life that I love deeply. It can be scary. It can be weird. It can be like your equilibrium because you're like, I can't believe I'm asking myself this question.
Yeah.
I think it's important to ask yourself from time to time.
Yeah. And that's kind of where I was really considering, like, you know, I already started diving into writing the second book. That's how excited I was to keep writing. But then as I sat with the confusion, I realized that the confusion was actually kind of a way to distract me and to avoid looking at, hey, you feel a little less confident in yourself. You are scared to get out there and start marketing again. You're scared that you're never going to be able to create a client again. And so the confusion kind of kept me from actually going out there and doing the thing. And so once I realized that, I was like, oh, okay, no, I definitely am meant to be a coach. Like, why did I ever question this? And I'm also meant to be a writer, and I can do both. And there's a way to figure out how to do both. So yeah, that again, but I needed that time. I needed that winter to just, I think, like regroup and just kind of get ready for the next thing. And I think we had talked about when you and I met previously that I was called into a new modality during this time as well. I actually signed up for a course in trauma and somatics and bringing body into my work, my transformational work. And so I'm doing that right now. And that was a sign like, okay, you're feeling a little underconfident. You're not wanting to return to coaching the way you have been coaching. What's going on? And it was like, I had my eye on this course for a couple of years and I didn't take it because it wasn't the time, but now it was the time. And I felt so clearly called to it. And once I started taking that course, I'm just like, oh, I love this work. This was it. You know, I needed to go here. It was leading me here. So, yeah. So everything's back on track now.
and like, let's be honest, it was never not on track. Like
That's
you
true.
created,
Thank you.
right? Because as you were saying, like intentional, unintentional, yet did I just manifest it? Like, yes, I would say if you go back to 7 years ago, Kayla, or even like 5 years ago, Kayla, like you, what did you do? Like let's look at it, like zoom out, like you actually created a coaching business that was so sustainable that you could just do some marketing, get some clients, and then just flip and focus on coaching. And then which also then created the space for you intentionally or unintentionally. And it was, I would argue it was a little bit of both, like to be able to focus on this next big project. And now you're not, quote, just a coach, you're also an author, and hell yeah, you can do both. And I think sometimes like fulfillment and creative fulfillment changes by just tweaking, like a tiny little tweak or an adjustment of how you spend your time, right? And so instead of being 100% of the time a coach, you're, I don't know, 80-20 or 60-40, or you change that percentage any old damn time you want because that's what works for you. Meanwhile, you have a sustainable business that brings in coaching clients when it's right for you. And you weren't you still coaching people? You had all, like you said, you were booked out, right? So you just stopped the marketing piece. Like we could easily just decide, like it's almost the way you told it was like almost like your coaching business stopped, but like no, you were still coaching. You were still coaching the whole time. You were.
I still had a full practice.
Right? So you weren't like stopping. You were just shifting your focus, and you frankly, I would say, didn't need to be doing a lot of marketing either when you had a full practice and really no extra space coming because of the writing. And so, and like I think this is such a beautiful example of like, you know, this is success, this is doing it your way, and it doesn't mean that it's easy or they don't get in your own way or that you don't get confused or, you know, it's all of those things. But the truth is, like, you've created a really beautiful setup in your work that allows you to travel, write, coach. You probably also have other things going on in your life, you know, and it enables that for you. And sometimes you have to ask the question, am I a writer now instead of a coach? And sometimes you do get confused and lose your confidence, even though you're clearly good at marketing because you had a booked out practice and you have a 7-year business, right? So I just think it's such a beautiful, thank you for sharing your example because your story, because it's such a beautiful example of what this journey is really like.
Yeah. And can we just really highlight that sometimes when it feels like we're not creating what we want or life isn't where we want it to be, when someone is looking at it from the outside, they're like, holy mackerel. Like, that is the kind of life I want to be living. And we're over here like, oh, nothing's right. It's not good enough. It's like, there's a gap here, right? And it's like someone else out there is looking at our lives just the way they are. And it's like, I want that. How did they do that? And so we have to remember that. I think as inspirers or models, it can be easy to get down on ourselves for maybe where we need to go. But there are people out there who are 10 steps behind who would just kill to have what we have. And I tell this to Ryan all the time because, you know, starting a business with a book is slow going. Yeah. It's hard to sell a book at the volume that you need to create a sustainable lifestyle. And I tell him all the time, but even though you're not there yet, look at your life and what you've been able to create. There are people that are just amazed. And so I think we have to remember that in the tough times.
100%. I think that's the perfect way to end this conversation, because I think people who are drawn to living life differently, right? And to building businesses or doing work that they love, you're already thinking bigger and oftentimes thinking about the future and not paying attention. You know, you're already creating big stuff and doing big things. And so within that, we also, those of us who are visionaries, entrepreneurs, world changers, like we also have to give ourselves some credit for, you're not to the next thing yet. And you didn't do, you know, but it's also, this is a creative process. This is life. This is entrepreneurship. And like you said, like when you can look at it from the outside, or when you can zoom out and look at it from the perspective of how far you've come and what you've been able to create, it's beautiful. And the hard stuff is just simply a piece of the process. That's all it is, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Where can we find you, Kayla? The book, your coaching, for people who want to work with you, where can we find you?
Yeah, so the best place to start would probably be my website, www.kaylamacarthur.com. Second to that is my Instagram. It's just Kayla MacArthur, so you can search for that on there. That's where I'm most active, and I love to share my adventures and my writings there. We also have an Instagram for the book, Gravel Roads Memoir. So if you're interested in learning more about that, you can check out that. There's some really fun content on there. Photos from Ryan's trip and just all the exciting things that have been occurring around this book. So those are the best places. And I just really want to thank you, Laura, for having me today. I've really enjoyed this conversation. And I just feel even like the creative juices bubbling up from our conversation. So I'm excited to kind of sit with what we've talked about for myself and see where we can go from here. So
yeah, beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so very much. I will put all the links in the comments so that people can find you, follow you, read the book, coach with you, all the things. Thank you for being part of this with me, and for being so honest and open with your story. I think it's really going to help a lot of people. So thank you.
Thank
and
you.
At that, we will close and see you at the next one.